All right, my good friends and fellow martial artists, I decided to do this little video because a good friend of mine saw another video that talked a little bit about what should you do if you injure someone in training. Um, I watched the other video and ultimately I thought the guy made some really good points. I did think that he rambled on a lot. By the way, I ramble on a little bit, so forgive me if I do that today. But bear with me because it's pretty important to remember that martial arts is literally, specifically, an opportunity for us to train in ways where we injure another human being for self-defense purposes. So if that's kind of where we are, we know we are doing something that is designed by its very nature to maybe knock someone unconscious. In kickboxing, if you punch or kick someone in the face or in the head area, you could ultimately injure them. There's concussions, there's, being knocked unconscious. There's also lacerations and contusions and other problems that you might have. I've seen where people have broken the bones around the eye, the orbital, or they've broken the nose. I've seen people who have broken the jaw. Those are real injuries that are likely if we're not careful. This is the most important thing if we're not careful. Obviously, in kickboxing, you can even block and you can take damage to the arms. You can block with the legs. I've seen people that have broken bones in the arms and in the legs defending against powerful kicks. Likewise, if you kick the body, you can break ribs. You can also do other things. I've seen great fighters that went down due to a ruptured internal organ. The liver and the spleen in particular are vulnerable when we kick people to the body. You can also destroy the knees and the elbows if you're not careful, or the ankles. Shoulders get torn up as well. Keep those things in mind. So in Jiu-Jitsu, we are literally practicing how to completely pull a limb to its maximum range, and then usually there's a pain indicator that we should tap. And if we don't tap, we will continue to pull and apply pressure, and it could destroy the joint. It could just injure it a little bit, and then it could injure it a lot, and then it could absolutely destroy it, which could require surgery or something of that nature. I've seen people that have been thrown and have injured a shoulder. I myself have had a class 2 separation of this shoulder. As an instructor, I was letting a student make throws on me, and I said, hey, look, I'm really good at falling, and I know you're new at this particular throw me. I didn't want them throwing other students, and they were really exuberant. They did a great throw, and I landed basically on the point of my shoulder as best as I could, and it tore 2 out of the 3 ligaments there. So that happens in throws. I've seen people that have torn up knees because they went to do a reap and they locked the knee joint and the knee doesn't bend that way. But in the submission game, when we're pulling on the arm for an arm bar, or we're cranking a Kimura lock, or we're cranking the Americana, we can tear up the shoulder very easily. We can obviously choke people in a way that they can be put unconscious. Knees and ankle locks are the same. Why am I telling you all of these potentials for injuries? The first thing is, if you understand the limitation of the body, you know when to stop. That's pretty important in Jiu-Jitsu. When we are in kickboxing, you need to know how much force you can punch without significantly injuring someone, as well as how much you need in order to significantly injure someone. Really kind of think about that. In self-defense, what if you didn't use enough force? You're probably going to lose, and in some cases, in self-defense, that would mean you would die. Man, it's a lot to think about. But let's put all of that aside. We're aware that in every physical activity we could be injured. Let's say we're playing football, American football. I go out to catch a pass. I jump up in the air to get it. A guy is slightly under me. I turn, I fall, I land on my shoulder. Oh, look, there's that class 2 separation. Very similar to being thrown in Judo or Jiu-Jitsu, for example. Let's say, for example, that I am the running back. I grab the ball and I'm trying to push through the line and I get hit by a defensive lineman. Concussion. Even with pads on, you can get a concussion. That happens. I've seen people that have been hit broadside in the middle of going to make a catch and they bust ribs. It just happens. I've seen knees get torn up in football. I mean, it's very similar. The body gets injured similarly, regardless if you're getting hit by a football player or kicked, whether you're getting hit by some other flying object, for example. I've seen baseball players get hit by the ball, even in the body, and it just really is, it's an awful hit. So you kind of start looking at those things and you start wondering, well, gosh, why would we do these activities, whether it's a football activity or even soccer? Imagine running as fast as you can and you collide with another human being, or you run and you go to get the ball and this other guy is kicking and he kicks you in the head as he's trying to kick the soccer ball. The reality is we could get injured. When we train in martial arts, we must train for the purpose of denying someone the ability to injure us. So our awareness, first of all, is even better than in football, baseball, or soccer. Those guys aren't trained to defend against injury, so to speak. Sure, make sure that we know how to take a hit, but the pads absorb a lot of that damage. So again, when they do get injured, it's often, even with pads on, there's really not a good defense for running as fast as you can and hitting somebody in football. Or you're running to get the ball, there's no defense, you're not even aware when somebody is also looking for the ball and they either kick you or they run into you. In martial arts, we're teaching and learning how to block those attacks and how to absorb those attacks in a way that we can minimize our own injury. Head movement, right? We want to get that head moving, and we want to use footwork in order to get our body slightly out of the way to move with or roll with the punch, so to speak. We want to do that. Let's get deep down into the reality of what happens if you injure someone else. If it is absolutely, genuinely on accident, there was no malicious intent. You weren't angry because they had hit you first. You were trying to work your material. They oftentimes made a mistake. I've kicked at people and kicked in a way that definitely would not have hit them hard, and then they move into it accidentally, and I hit them harder than I anticipated, and I try to pull the kick. It happens from time to time. We need to have good control in martial arts so that we're training safely. I've also had opportunities where someone has been a little exuberant and they've punched me, kicked me, thrown me, or even leg locked me, and my body gave. I recently had a young man, a teenager. I was helping him train. We were not competing, and he grabbed a technique, and I was waiting to see what he was going to do. And I had him in a leg lock. He had me in a leg lock, and he was just pretty exuberant. And I think he was excited. He cranked really fast, and my knee just came apart. And I was off that leg for several days, and then with physical therapy, it was a couple of months, and I'm fully recovered. I didn't sue the kid. I've twisted other people up or hurt other people on accident from time to time. And these are usually minor injuries. You don't need surgery. When I say minor, you might go get an x-ray, but you don't need surgery. That's where it gets really serious, right? The medical bills get extremely high. We have to decide what we're going to do. Now, if you're engaging in martial arts, you probably have signed a waiver. How valuable that waiver is in a court of law is really left up to speculation. Some people would say it's not worth the paper it's written on. Other people's belief is I wouldn't have a martial arts school without a good waiver system in place. And the reason why is because, the instructor could be liable if he's running a program where the students are injuring each other. Hold on a second. Now, that's not me injuring another person. That's two students injuring each other, and they can sue the instructor. That's the reality of things. So it is incumbent upon the instructor to run a safe program, to talk safety, to teach safety, to encourage, let's try to tap out when somebody is working an arm lock on us or a leg lock, rather than trying to hold out. Now, you can do other things. You can hold the position and let them work on an escape without cranking it to a point where it's going to injure someone. But the bottom line is it's the instructor who's really most at risk. And here's kind of why, when you think about it. Without a waiver system in place, and without a good understanding of safety, and without all these other risk mitigating effects, we will tend to have people that are dangerous. They will exercise and train in a dangerous way. They're trying to win, and they're trying to, a lot of times, respond to a high level of stress and anxiety. And we want to keep that level of stress and anxiety low so that they can learn. So if we fail to do that, we will become negligent, maybe even grossly negligent. Now, in a court of law, that is significantly different than two guys were rolling, and a guy twisted his knee and needed, some sort of meniscus repair or some sort of ACL or MCL repair. That's a knee surgery kind of a situation. Totally on accident. Guy, nobody hit him, nobody kicked him, nobody tried to pull his leg, fast or anything. And the bottom line is he just stepped wrong, twisted wrong, and injured himself. That can happen. Happens in tennis. I've seen and heard of lots of guys that are training, doing great things, and they injure themselves through fair wear and tear. Put that aside. Somebody legitimately, intentionally kicks in a way that locks the knee, and the knee then folds backwards. So the knee does a good job of bending kind of in this way, right? And they lock the knee, and then they intentionally, they kick through, and it bends beyond the 180-degree mark, destroying the knee. It was an intentional kick. It wasn't an accidental kick. It wasn't just accidentally too much force. They tried to injure you. The student then becomes fully responsible because it's then malicious on the student's part. Nothing an instructor can do about that. We've already put the safety systems in place. The student did something foolish. If it was with anger, with maliciousness, the first thing is the instructor should seek help for the injured party. And then the second thing they should do is talk to counsel and then probably dismiss the student. If nothing else, you need to have a system in place where you are, hey, you injured somebody accidentally. You injured somebody accidentally again. Then it looks like you maliciously injured this guy. You are out. Kind of a 3-strike rule is often reasonable. I've never seen that in my career. 40 years of doing kickboxing and jiu-jitsu, karate and kempo, and a number of other things. Judo is one of those ones where I've really seen very few injuries when people train safely, and there's no real maliciousness in judo and jiu-jitsu, for example, in a good school. I have seen people that have had some sort of axe to grind, some sort of vendetta, maliciousness about them, and they want to hurt people. The best thing to do is the instructor is aware they're watching that person, and then they dismiss that person. You don't need those people in your school. Get them out. We had a guy that trained with us for a short while, and he was a big guy, and he wanted to exert his strength on people. Normally, the big guys seem very gentle in my program, which is interesting because I kind of look at them like, oh crap, what if this big guy grabs somebody? Or even me, what if he grabs me and he does this and he yanks really hard, he's going to just pull my arm off. The bottom line is that there's a big difference between a gentle giant and somebody that's malicious. You can be very small and very young and be malicious and injure people. It's not necessarily just about size. So my point to bring up the big guy is this particular guy was both malicious and big. The bottom line is that, he had torqued some people up, and he was ultimately just dismissed. It wasn't in my school. It was in another school where I was training. And the bottom line is, outside of the school, he was a pretty good guy, decent enough guy. But inside the school, I just felt like that he was just, kind of vicious. And anyways, we see those guys. Okay, that being the case, what about other kinds of martial arts systems? I'm a self-defense instructor, so I teach in a safe way so that we can defend ourselves in the street. But there are professional schools. When I say professional schools, professional fighting schools. These people go to the MMA competitions or the full contact kickboxing competitions regularly. We'll do those things as needed. It's not very often that we're doing those full contact MMA style, no holds barred style events. But if you do one of those things, guess what? You have to train for survival. It's very similar to being in the street and you're using every ability that you have, every bit of speed, every bit of power to win. And people can get injured in those things. So let's kind of differentiate that. If we're in the middle of the spectrum of martial arts, then we should have very few people really getting injured. All the way on one side of the spectrum, there's not enough contact to even really consider training. It's like cardio kickboxing. You're learning how to punch and kick, but you're not hitting anybody. You're hitting a bag. And if you do hit somebody, it's so super light contact that you're probably not ready for self-defense. But that's okay. It's a cardio kickboxing event. Kind of more towards the middle is kickboxing and Muay Thai. Full contact karate training like Kyokushinkai, but not necessarily in the tournament setting. Then you get in the tournament setting and it really moves far to the right, where you see people that are there to hurt you, they're there to win, they're there to injure you. They don't mind breaking you knocking you unconscious, or whatever it takes to win. So let's get back to where we are when we're training. If you agree to enter into our school and you sign the waiver, you're agreeing to train for the most part, you should have good insurance. The school should have a good insurance. And at some point, if you do get injured, there should be a financial system in place to make sure that you're covered. We do that at our school. We want to have people covered. If you enter into the mixed martial arts world, the full contact karate world, or some sort of K1 kickboxing kind of event, or even a tough man contest where the job of your opponent is to completely take you apart, you have to sign a document. You have to go through a physical, and a doctor has to approve you to fight. There is no suing that guy in the end. It's mutual combat, signed and sealed and delivered, and that's kind of the way. So keep in mind that if you're over here in that full contact event, you're going to get injured, or you're going to have to injure somebody. Very, very few people are really doing that. There's a lot more here in the Judo, Jiu-Jitsu world, submission grappling, point karate, and also kind of a medium to heavy contact with lots of padding in the amateur kickboxing world. It's just much more reasonable, and the chance of getting injured are very, very easily mitigated with safety. All right. Guys, if you have questions on these things, I want you to know first and foremost, I am not a lawyer. I'm a martial arts instructor. I'm going to tell you that in my experience, there should be very few injuries in the school, particularly with new students and particularly with older students, okay? So we're careful to assess the individual and train at their level. That's important. So again, let's say, for example, it's your first day. You're training with me. You're over 40 years old. You haven't been training for a while. You don't run. You don't exercise. This is your first day. You got to warm those joints up. You got to stretch. You got to train at a slow rate. Learn well. Tap early. And if you're doing kickboxing, we're keeping it light. That makes sense. After a year, you should be flexible enough, strong enough, durable enough to move up into that medium to even heavy contact event where you're doing full throws, you're doing full takedowns, you're working heavy arm locks, heavy chokes, and you're really tapping when you are in jeopardy, or you are, it's okay to end the fight if you've taken a few heavy hits. Then after several years, 5-6 years, and you're really good in martial arts, you can fight full contact, MMA. You can do all these other things that you want to do where you put your body at risk, but no one escapes those things unscathed. My last cage match, my last full contact event, I was 40 years old, and I think I was the oldest guy there. I fought there was 3 different events, right? There was basically a submission event, and then if you won your event there, you'd move on to the pancration event where you could strike open-handed, punch and kick to the body, kick to the head. And if you won your event, the third event was the MMA event. That being the case, there's 3 different sets of rules, and as you progress, you were probably more and more tired, more and more injured. But at the end of that cage event, I was really, my legs hurt where I was kicked, my body hurt where I was punched. I did really well in the submission event, so I didn't have any joint pain or any of that sort of thing. But by the end of the last fights, even though I won my division, I was wiped out. I was hurt. I wasn't injured. I was hurt. I was achy, a lot of pain. I put my body through a lot. Not many folks are fighting outside of their 20s and 30s. If you make it all the way to your 40s, like Tank Abbott, okay, you're one of the super tough guys. Most people are smart enough to kind of cut it off at about 35-ish. Let's stop fighting about age 35. George Foreman came back and he became, really just a great fighter after retirement. He came back and he just fought great. Evander Holyfield also, another great fighter. Guys, I hope this has been helpful. If I can help you in the future, let me know. Come train with me in self-defense. We do so safely. Here at Conway Toe to Toe, we believe in training for real combat, for self-defense in particular, and doing so safely. We're at 807 Bill Dean Drive in Conway, Arkansas, and you can call me at 501-515-4788. We will train you. Take care. God bless.